Hey there, YouTube! Welcome back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer, solo tabletop board gamer, solo gamer. Welcome. Glad you guys have tuned in. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about a system that I touched on in some of my early videos, but I never really did a video on it or really got into depth as to how I use it. And, well, I apologize for that, and I seen one of the comments that asked me if I could explain more about that. Now, I can't remember the name of that YouTuber, but you know who you are, and a special shout out to you, because that's what this video is going to be about, and I'm going to talk about a couple of game systems that it works very well with. But before I get into this video, I got a disclaimer to get out there. First and foremost, if you like my video, give me a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, please click the subscribe button followed by the little bell icon. Every time this ugly mug uploads a brand new video, you will hear about it. So the system I'm talking about is extremely simple, and it's something you probably already have in your house, just sitting there. And the other things that you will need, more than likely you already have as well. And those things is a deck of playing cards, piece of notebook paper and a pencil, and or a computer with a Word document, or maybe a note app on your phone. Doesn't really matter however you want to do it, whether you want to do it paper or paperless. So let's turn back the clock a little bit and talk about how I resurrected this old system. And before I made this channel and got into actually making videos and talking about a lot of solo RPG stuff, this is a system I had used. And when Mythic came out, I was talking a lot about Mythic, a lot about basic fantasy, basic Dungeons and Dragons, all the, I'm going to say, those bare essentials if you're looking to get into solo tabletop gaming that are going to be very simple ways to help you get there. And for whatever reason, I just kind of put the playing card deck to the wayside. And I shouldn't have, but I did. So I had a itch that I wanted to scratch. And what that was is I wanted to play some horror, paranormal type of RPG gaming. You know, particularly that gaming that deals with some events that we all are all too familiar with. Maybe as you're laying in bed at night, you hear somebody walking down the stairs, and you know there should be nobody walking down the stairs, and you just chalk it up to your imagination that, well, maybe it's temperature fluctuation, or maybe the wood is just drying out and creaking. Or those times to where you're sitting there and you get the feeling like you're being watched and you think you see something out of the peripheral vision, only to turn your head to see nothing there. And you chalk it up as your imagination, only to find yourself a couple days later pondering that thought once again, trying to figure out what it was that you saw, only to come up with the same logical reasoning that you can, which is going to be it's just unexplained events. And there's a couple of RPG systems out there that this particular system works well with, and I want to talk about those. And if you're looking to get into horror type of gaming, you may find this a little bit more interesting than using random tables or even Mythic for it. So let me get into the story as to how this all came about. I have been looking for a while for the Call of Cthulhu game, and I've been looking at Chasm, and there's a couple of other publishers out there that make the game. The only problem is, as I'm looking at some of these books, they're out of print, they're rather expensive, and like most RPG systems, you have to buy the player's guide, and then you got to have the game reference guide, and then you got to have the encounters guide, because that's how these publishers make their money, is by breaking books up and having you buy 3 rather than giving them to you in 1 volume, which would be nice. So my quest continued, and I eventually did find something very interesting I want to share with you guys. Now, it's not in print. I was able to locate a new copy of this, and like I said, for those of you who are interested in getting into this type of gaming, it might be a game system you may like to look into. Now, I'm going to do a full review later on this after I played a few games through it and really have digested this book. But that is the Call of Cthulhu for the D20 system. Now, let me look at the copywriting because this is out of print at this point. I was able to 2002. There we go. The cool thing about this game is it's a D20 system made by Wizards of the Coast, which, if you're familiar with the D20 system, which I'm going to go on a limb and say the vast majority, maybe 9 out of 10 of you are, whether you're playing 5th edition D&D or you started in 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, what have you. Even if you're playing basic fantasy, you still technically are playing a D20 system because they have to follow underneath the open game licensing law, which is a D20 system. So if you've already played that system, you're already familiar with the game mechanics of this system. You already know it. The difference is it's based in H.P. Lovecraft's world, the Call of Cthulhu. Very, very, very cool book. And so anyways, as I was saying, I was able to find a not brand new, but they said like new copy. And I have ordered it because I've been looking at this for a while, but I haven't been able to find a decent copy of it until now, which is very cool. But so while my quest continued to find this particular book, I decided to scratch that old itch with another one that I have that I do enjoy, and that is Palladium's Beyond the Supernatural. Beyond the Supernatural is a very, very cool game. I'm going to say, because I have not read Call of Cthulhu, but the two systems are probably just about, I'm not going to say 100%, but pretty close to identical, being that the game mechanics are different, considering the fact that they both deal with the paranormal, the supernatural, the things that go bump in the night, and ghosts, specters, and, well, demigods and demons from beyond this realm that evil cults are conspiring to evoke and bring into our world. And somehow your characters get involved into this, and it's up to them to try to stop this evil before it devours the whole world and plummeting them into eternal darkness. You know, no pressure or anything there. So anyways, I had picked up this book and jumped into it, and I have to say Kevin did an excellent job with this book. This is the his revised edition, which is the 2nd edition, and they worked out a lot of kinks. If anybody has seen the original edition, which I have, when you read through it and you get done with your character creation and everything, you have the feeling of, okay, what now? Whereas with this edition, the 2nd edition, they ironed a lot of those kinks out, and character creation is simple. You can roll up a character very quickly and be on your way. The other thing I like is the encounters. It's much easier to be able to template encounters from here and put them into the game and keep everything moving nice and freely. So now, I think I've talked enough about the two game systems to use for this system and how I do it. And it's very simple. Now, of course, your deck's going to have your 4 suits, right? We're going to have your diamonds, your hearts, your spades, and your clubs. Now, how I do this, and I've done this in the past, is it's very simple. So, ace, which I refer to as 1 rather than the ace, because we're not actually going to play euchre or poker with this. We're using it as a randomized events table. So the ace will be 1, and then the 10 is going to be the 10. And I save the suit cards, which are going to be your jacks, king, and queen. And then there's one card left, the joker, which I'll get into last, what I do with that one. So how I break them up is hearts. Hearts, I like to do the random encounters, and what I'll do is number it 1 through 10. So we'll say the 3 of hearts, maybe you may find 1d4 healing potions, or you may find, how I like to do that, 1d4 healing potions and or maybe 1d3 healing kits. And I will at that point start building my table from there. Now it doesn't all have to be about healing. It can be about perhaps an NPC is encountered that's a good NPC at this point and is able to offer healing, food, or what have you to your characters. Or they could find something that helps them. The overall theme is hearts being, at that point, focused on healing and gaining things. Then I go into diamonds. Diamonds are, well, how I like to use it is like the magical end. This is where you're going to find your magical scrolls, or maybe encounter a magical trap, or perhaps a magical encounter is going to happen. That maybe if your character's like particular, we're going to say in Beyond the Supernatural game setting, you know, to them, magic is all stage, smoke and mirrors, and sleight of hand. And when something happens, that's real magic that deals with the paranormal and forces beyond our own world. Well, at that point, they may not be able to comprehend and digest that too well. And it's going to take them a while to get adjusted to it. So that's how I use diamonds. I will break diamonds up that way. I try to focus on magical traps, magical scrolls, magical potions, so on and so forth. Now, you may be wondering, well, wait a minute, you just said healing potions. Even though healing potion is a potion, I don't really consider that magic. It is magical, it is a magical potion because it is a healing potion, but I consider it more of the healing end of things than a potion of, like, to drink it, a potion of flight or invisibility or shape change or something like that. So now I covered the hearts and I covered the diamonds. Now let's go into clubs. Clubs, I like to, at that point, use that for the more mundane type of encounters. So this could be encountering 1D for townspeople. Now it could be encountering 1D for evil townspeople that don't really have good intentions for your characters. Maybe they meet them on the road and they just want to murder you and take everything. It could also have to do with you, at that point, small story twists, things that will delay you, such as a flat tire, or perhaps the vehicle overheats, just the mundane things, everything that you could think of that affects us in our everyday lives, that slow us down and aggravate us a little bit, just to make our lives, well, more frustrating. And that's how I like to think of clubs, and how I will, at that point, randomize my clubs. Then I go into spades. Spades I save as encounters. Those are going to be enemies, whether they're human, non-human. If you're playing fantasy, that could be orcs, it could be goblins, it could be so on and so forth. That's the way I like to keep the spades. Now I will also put in traps with spades as well. So anything that's going to bring harm to your character potentially will be the spades. Now the suit cards, your jack, king, and queen, what I like to do with those is put large encounters in those when they're drawn. So we'll just say the king of spades could be, well, I don't know, a fire-breathing dragon. or perhaps the main antagonist of your story has decided it's time to go toe to toe. And yeah, this is what's going to happen. And it's quite interesting how this system plays out, and how when you draw the card, you look at the game, and it forces you to, at that point, make some tough decisions, which is very interesting, and it keeps it interesting as well. Now, you could use it as like a yes, no. Me personally, I wouldn't, but that's entirely up to you. If you wanted like a mythic answering yes, no questions, you could do that. I think it would be, I personally just wouldn't use it that way. So, last but not least, the Joker card. Now, depending on the theme of the game you're playing, considering I'm playing Beyond the Supernatural, how I set up my Joker card was an abandoned location. And I put different locations, roll 1d8. And it's very interesting how that fell into the storyline and how things progressed from there and how things ended up. I want to share that with you right now. So, keeping my game journal right here, and so the story starts out, I rolled up two characters. One, his name is Tom Muldoon, and he is a parapsychologist, very well educated, and he decides to use his talents to make money by investigating paranormal for people, considering in our modern society, ghost hunting is a very popular thing. Something people decide to do on the weekends and stuff is a pastime. And he does it in a more professional type of, how do we put this? Just a more professional way of doing it. Like, if you want to think about TAPS, or Paranormal Activity, I believe that's the one. I'm trying to remember the other show name, and I can't come to mind right now. But anyways, like those guys, too, are very professional. They come in, they do an investigation, they try to debunk everything and present evidence to you that, you know, well, maybe it's not footsteps you're hearing as much as when the wind blows, you just hear this window knocking back and forth that's loose inside the frame. That's the problem here. You know, one of those situations. But he knows in the back of his mind that it's not always the case, and sometimes there's some, well, pretty nasty things out there that can cause a lot of issues. So he has his friend, which his name is Elhard. Try to remember the last name I gave to Elhard, and I can't. Anyways, his first name is Elhard, and Elhard is a ghost hunter. He is a legitimate ghost hunter. He has the ability to create telepathic rounds to put into the .22 caliber rifle that he carries, and can do a lot of damage to entities of not of our world, I should say. And he also has these goggles. When he puts them on, he can actually see spiritual energy and see the true forms of the spirits, rather than just a wisp of smoke and maybe orbs of light. He actually sees what's there. So the story takes place in northern Michigan. Why? Because I'm from Michigan, and it seems like the most creepiest stuff that happens in this state always happens way up north. And so I decided, why not? So they take on this job to go up to a town called Milfost, and it's very simple, very easy gig. You're supposed to go in and investigate the public library to prove that one of the former librarians who had passed away in the library was still there, and her presence was still there haunting it, and to verify it. And considering he's this well-known parapsychologist, it's going to carry a long ways, and it's for their Halloween festival. Very, very simple money. So him and Ellard decided to jump in the car, head to northern Michigan, take a few days vacation, get away from the hustle bustle of the city, and make some decent money while doing it. This is where it gets interesting. So that was my scene one. The scene two is as they're traveling, and they're traveling down this dark 2-lane road, and I had drawn the card. And the card at that point, well, it told me the option that things had to change. The course of the route had to change. So how I interpreted that into the story was as they were driving down the road, and this is in very secluded, dark 2-lane highway out in the middle of nowhere. And as they crested a little hill, they see emergency vehicle lights everywhere. And the entire road is shut down from just a horrific accident. So the cop asks him where they're heading to, and he tells him Milfost. And he's like, okay, he's like, go back a mile, you'll see this dirt road. He's like, take that, make another left, stay on that road, and it'll shoot you straight into downtown where you want to go. So he's, cool. They're in an area they have no idea where they're at. So they decide to take those directions, jump on that road, and as they make a left, they notice they're on this rough gravel road that's winding through this national park forest area. And as they're driving through and everything seems to be on track and going right, they hear a loud boom, followed by steam coming up. Now mind you, how these changes are coming up in the story is as I am drawing the playing cards and reading what I put on that encounter to at this point alter the story and the changes. So as they're driving through the forest, the radiator bursts. They see the big steam cloud come out. They look at it. The parapsychologist, I did give him some skill in automotive, so he passed the skills with flying colors to say, well, we lost the radiator. Looks like we're on foot. And unfortunately, where they were at, northern Michigan, their cell phones wouldn't work. They had no cell coverage. So they decided to start walking and possibly finding something nearby that they could use a phone. So while they were walking, they noticed this old grown over driveway that was heading off into some tall grass, and it looked like a building, maybe possibly abandoned, but they weren't sure, but there was a dim light on inside of there. So they were like, well, considering there was nothing else around them, they decided if there's electricity, maybe there's a chance there's somebody there, or maybe there's a working telephone line. So they had walked up into this house, and as they walked around and they investigated, they looked in the windows and they didn't see anybody, but they could see a light coming from the back room. So they knocked on the door and they got no answer, and they decided to investigate. They're investigators, this is what they do. Now they went into the house, and as they were creeping around this dark house, they had noticed that there was this old Pepsi machine, or Coke machine, whatever, what have you, Pepsi, Coke, just a pop machine. And the light they were seeing from window was from this eerily lit pop machine, and the fluorescent tube was making the weird buzzing noise. But they still didn't see any signs of anybody there. Well, Ellard decided, you know what, let's see if there's at least something in there, because after this walk we've been through, I am just dying of thirst. So he walks up to put his change in when this weird, bizarre, scrawny figure comes walking out of the darkness asking, can I help you? Which startles both of them and catches them off guard. And of course it's at that point that Tom explains to him their situation, asking if they would have a phone to where they could call for help. He tells them to follow them and leads them further into this ran down shack to where they go into this back room. And once they walk in, they can smell the heavy odor of burnt tobacco. And as I drew the card and the encounter happened, there was a girl, presumably because they were introduced as perhaps maybe his sister or his girlfriend, that was sitting on the couch in a blank stare, smoking a cigarette, staring at the TV, uh, just oblivious to people in the same room with her. He let them use the phone. They called and set up arrangements for a local garage to send out a wrecker and to give him a ride back into town. It was at this point that Tom thanked him and left him some money to as a show of, how do we put this, just being hospitable, I guess you could say. The man gave him an evil laugh and lit a cigarette taking the money and told him to be careful. So as they left the house and they were walking back down this long overgrown driveway, they seen this darkened figure standing off into the field. And they heard a hissing noise. And of course, they were like, hello, blah, 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 thinking it's another person. So as they gotten closer to it, this thing began to attack them. And they found themselves quickly, now mind you, I will say again, this is by drawing the cards and reading the random things I put on the cards, how this is going on. So they had found out this was, well, they failed a skill check, so they weren't sure as to what they saw. But what it was a ghoul that was summoned there. Because the man that they encountered, in fact, was the main antagonist of the story, and is a necromancer. And, well, he's always looking for, how do we put this, fresh meat to add to the ranks. So they had quite a large battle with this ghoul because they didn't know what they were dealing with. And this thing hurt both of them pretty bad, but they were able to defeat it. So by the time they got this thing defeated and were able to get away from the situation, they were at that point heading back towards the car to where they thought safety was. Interesting enough, one of the things that I put in there as a random was one of your party members goes missing. So I had drawn that card. So as Ellard reached the car and turned around, Tom is nowhere in sight. He can't find him. He's calling for him, looking for him. He just disappeared. The last thing he knows, they were running towards the car. He looked over his shoulder and saw him, and as they got closer to the car, he was just gone. So as the story progresses, he's looking for Tom, calling out for him, and I decided it was at that good point to end that scene and start a new one, which I did. The next card I drew was the Joker, and I had to roll a 1d8, which is an abandoned farm, which really, really worked out well considering the backdrop of where they were at. So as the sun is rising and coming up, and Ellard can really get a good look at now his surroundings and what's around him, because not everything is dark anymore, he's walking up the driveway to this abandoned farm, thinking, you know, maybe Tom head this way. Maybe he saw something over there or whatever, because he wasn't seeing him anywhere else. So he's getting closer to this abandoned farm, and he's already on edge, and he hears the set of footsteps behind him as he turns around. And of course he failed the horror factor check on this, and he sees two cloaked people that at that point engage him in combat. You know, he's already hurt, and it doesn't take much for them to knock him out. When those two come to, they find themselves both tied up, sitting outside of a pentagram that's chalked on the floor, surrounded by candles, and they are also surrounded by humans wearing cloaks, magical symbols, and behind them they see more of these nasty hissing creatures. And of course they do recognize the man that's reinciting the evil magical spells from the Necronomicon. And that's where I had left my story off, where I'm going to pick up. Now, all of that came from using this deck of cards, and it worked out very well, and particularly in this type of gaming, keeps things randomized and keeps things moving, and it forces your hand to be able to make some tough decisions, but actually does make the game more interesting. A good example is drawing the Joker card. It was almost as if it was like perfectly timed to happen that way, given the fact that they were both wounded and injured trying to make it back to the car when one of them goes missing and the other one is only apprehended later. Now, this is I put a very, very, very good system, and I'm trying to find words to formulate to make this more simple. I think what I'm going to use here is the same thing as if you were to take a training seminar with an engineer and you were learning to diagnose a mechanical or electronic system or something like that, and they will tell you to remember this acronym, KISS, K-I-S-S, which means keep it simple, stupid. And it's good advice, it really is, when it comes to this system. Keep it simple. Keep it very brief and descriptive enough to be able to give you cues to be able to change the storyline, but quick enough to where it's going to add into your story and really force your hand at making some tough decisions. Now, considering the fact that my character set out to go to this small town, and, well, they haven't made it. They're both captured, and by the way things look, might be the next human sacrifices. I guess we'll have to see what comes out of that, because I plan on getting back into that game here tonight and going forward with that some more. But just a quick recap. Very simple system. All you need is a deck of playing cards. You're going to want to keep all the cards in here. Now, you can either use one Joker or you could use two Jokers. And you'd have a higher chance at that point of having that ability to have multiple locations or maybe multiple encounters, or however you want to put that into your system, you can. Now, as I explained how I use the hearts, diamonds, the spades, and the clubs, that's just the way that I do it. You may have a completely different take on that and want to do it a completely different way. Or if you want more randomness into your game and to be 100% completely just surprised, don't follow any of the suits. Just at that point, write out all your randoms for each card and then shuffle your cards real well, start your game. There is also one other advantage to this system, and that is answering another question. Some people have asked me, how do you limit your RPG? Like, how long should it take? I mean, we've all heard the tales of people that were involved in 2-3 year long campaigns where they had played every weekend for 3 years straight. And this right here will help you with that, because if you think about it, you're only going to have 52 scenes to your RPG. Once your cards are out, your RPG is over. That is, of course, if your characters survive to see the end. I guess we'll have to see. Anyways, I'd like to hear your opinions on this. How does it work out? Go ahead and give it a shot and let me know if you find this to be a useful idea to incorporate into your solo gaming, or maybe if you're happy just with a randomized table. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. If you have not subscribed, please click the subscribe button, followed by the bell icon to get notified of my most recent video uploads. And with that being said, it is time for me to get into some gaming. My Saturday chores are over, the video is made, and now it's time for gaming. Alright guys, I'll see you hopefully next week, same channel, same time, and this is Artichoke Dip out.